Today we're talking the top buys and sells for fantasy football ahead of week 10. I recommend watching the video all the way through because at the end I'm going to have a rapid fire segment that gives you 4 bonus buys. Also, make sure you're using our trade calculator, yardsperfantasy.com, to get the best deals on your week 10 trades. Let's go. My first buy for week 10 fantasy football is Trey McBride. Trey McBride has been a hot waiver wire ad for the last few weeks. That was especially true in week 9, coming off a huge breakout performance of 10 catches for 95 yards and a touchdown. However, fantasy managers who picked him up after that performance are feeling a little bit disappointed after he went just 3 for 22 in week 9. And that opens the buy window for another week because some of those managers are feeling the week 8 performance was a fluke. However, that game came with Josh Dobbs at quarterback, and his disappointing week 9 was with Clayton Tune. That's a huge difference. Now the Cardinals are getting Kyler Murray back for week 10, which will bring some normalcy back to the quarterback position in Arizona. And that's great news for all the Cardinals pass catchers. For Trey McBride, he had been trending up for weeks prior to his big breakout. And then Zach Ertz went down and opened up things even more. He now has had target shares of 18.2%, 38.9%, and 25% over the last 3 games. Remember, Trey McBride was a second-round pick in 2022 and a quality tight end prospect, so him breaking out is no surprise. What he did in week 8, that was a legitimate performance. He may not reach 25 fantasy points again, but with Kyler Murray at quarterback, Trey McBride could be a tight end 1 from here on out. Another guy I'm buying in fantasy football ahead of week 10 is Bijan Robinson. Bijan Robinson has been one of the biggest disappointments of fantasy football this season. If only someone had been there to warn you not to draft him so highly. Oh, that's right. You're welcome. But here we are in week 10, and his value has gotten to about as low as it can possibly go. His fantasy managers are angry, frustrated, and desperate. They're also losing matchups because they misused their most precious draft pick, and they're running out of time to turn things around. This is where we swoop in and we make an offer. Now, of course, this is a buy low opportunity. We don't need to pay preseason prices to make it happen. Not even close. But there is a chance that he does return something closer to that preseason value in the second half of the season. But I do want to put a disclaimer on this. You're only making this deal if your team's in really good shape. You can buy low, and it's not going to kill you if it doesn't work out. Because there's absolutely risk involved here. And the risk, his name is Arthur Smith. But we can all agree Bijan Robinson is a super talented running back. That was never a question. His fantasy production has been held down by Arthur Smith's insistence on playing his inferior running backs far more than he should. But we've seen rookie running backs in the past. They often have their best stretch in the second half of the season. They're figuring out the NFL game and their teams unleash them. There's also a real possibility that the Falcons look for more ways to get their offense going as the losses begin to stack up. But maybe that's giving Arthur Smith a little bit more credit than he deserves. If that happens though, Bijan Robinson can be a league winner. Like I've already mentioned, he's a very talented runner. He is also one of the best receiving running backs in the NFL. He's already had 5 games with at least 4 receptions. Even in his more suppressed role as of late, Bijan leads all running backs in routes, he's top 3 in targets, and he's top 10 in running back receptions. And in the run game, Bijan Robinson is averaging 5 yards per carry, and he's top 5 in evaded tackles. All he needs is the dials turned up a little bit on his usage. And if that happens, we could be looking at a true fantasy football league winner with matchups in the fantasy playoffs against the Panthers, Colts, and Bears. Oh my. I'm also trying to buy Aaron Jones in week 10. Aaron Jones has been about as disappointing as any running back in 2023. Most of that has been due to health. His early season hamstring injury lingered for many weeks, and the team kept him in a limited role even when he returned. However, in week 9, Aaron Jones was back to a full workload. He carried the ball 20 times for 73 yards and a touchdown. It wasn't only his first 20 carry game of the season, but it was the first time he's even reached double-digit carries. He was also targeted 6 times, which equaled a 24% target share. And that was his 3rd straight game with at least 5 targets. Jones was on the field for a season-high 57% of the snaps, as it appears the team is finally comfortable to let him loose. And when he's healthy, Aaron Jones is one of the most explosive and versatile running backs in football. Even in a bad offense, his involvement in the passing game should keep him as a weekly top 15 option for the rest of the season. And looking ahead to the fantasy playoffs, Jones gets juicy matchups against the Buccaneers, Panthers, and the Vikings to finish out the season and to help you take home a title. And if you believe the Packers give Aaron Jones another big workload at Week 10, then you can play this pick'em on Underdog Fantasy. Lock in your pick now or draft a whole starting lineup for Week 10 on Underdog Fantasy and use promo code YARDSPER to get a $100 deposit match and a free mystery pick'em. Josh Jacobs is another running back I'm trying to buy before Week 10 in fantasy football. The coaching and quarterback changes in Las Vegas last week were good news for Josh Jacobs. I talked about that on Sunday's Start Sit Show. It was fair to anticipate a shift in the offense to feature their star running back more than they had in previous weeks. We saw a glimpse of that in Aiden O'Connell's first start earlier in the season when Josh Jacobs took 17 carries and was targeted 11 times. Now, the game script in Week 9 didn't allow for Jacobs to get involved in the passing game the same way he had previously, but he handled a season-high 26 rush attempts and he found the end zone twice. Moving forward, we can anticipate more involvement in the passing game, and Jacobs already has 3 games with 5 or more targets, and he's going to continue to take a significant number of carries as well. In an offense that looked far more functional than it had at any point this season, Josh Jacobs will be the biggest beneficiary from these recent changes. He should return high-end RB2, low-end RB1 value for the rest of the season, and then in the Fantasy Football Championship, he will get to run wild against the Colts, who have allowed the 5th most fantasy points per game to the running back position. The guy I'm putting on the trade block and trying to sell ahead of Week 10 in fantasy football is Kenneth Walker. When it happened in Week 8, I chalked it up to injury related, but it happened again in Week 9. We need to have a conversation. I'm talking about the backfield splits between Zach Charbonnet and Kenneth Walker. For the first 7 weeks of the season, this was Walker's backfield. No question, uncontested. Walker was playing so well that he was shutting out Charbonnet more and more as the season went along, every single week. But over the last 2 games, Zach Charbonnet has been on the field for more snaps than Kenneth Walker. In Week 8, Charbonnet outsnapped Walker 59% to 41%. In Week 9, it was 55% to 49%. Prior to that, Kenneth Walker had seen a snap share below 60% just once. And while Walker had 2 targets to Charbonnet's 1, the rookie actually ran 18 routes to Walker's 13. That's a major concern for Kenneth Walker fantasy managers. We may be able to chalk some of that up to a 34-point loss, but this has become a situation that we have to monitor closely. That's especially true after how much Pete Carroll talked up Zach Charbonnet heading into Week 9. Now, the good news is Kenneth Walker has still been leading in carries, but it's just not by the wide margin that he was earlier in the season. Prior to Week 8, Kenneth Walker had taken 79.6% of the running back rush attempts. That has dipped to 65.4% over the last 2 weeks, and that's per JJ Zacharyson on Twitter. And Zach Charbonnet has seen 3 of the team's 4 red zone carries over the last 2 weeks. I'm not ready to completely panic yet, but I'm on high alert and I am fielding offers if I'm the Kenneth Walker manager. I don't think Charbonnet will take over the backfield by any means, but it's trending towards a 50-50 split that could become a headache for fantasy football. Before we get to the bonus buys for Week 10, if you're enjoying this video and you find it at all valuable, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. I'm pumping out content like this all season long. And leave your trade questions in the comments. I'll try to get to all of them. Welcome to Rapid Fire Mode. It's the bonus buys. And we're going to start with Alexander Mattison. Alexander Mattison is not a great running back. I told you that all summer long. Don't draft him. I hope you listened. However, at this point, he's a buy low. Mattison was starting to lose some touches to Cam Akers, but unfortunately Cam Akers ruptured another Achilles. Tragic. But that leaves Ty Chandler as the only real competition in that backfield. And clearly the Vikings didn't love him before because they went and they traded for Cam Akers. And with no Kirk Cousins, Alexander Mattison should see a pretty good workload every single week. I'm also putting in offers for Jonathan Taylor. He's back, baby, up to a 74% snap share in Week 9. The Zach Moss era is dead. It's over. It's Jonathan Taylor time. We know who this guy is. Go buy him. He gets the Falcons in the Fantasy Football semifinals and the Raiders in the Fantasy Football Championship week. Oh, go get him. Ride him to a title. Now, Jonathan Taylor might not be a buy low, but Brock Purdy is. Brock Purdy's been pretty bad the last few weeks. But coming out of the bye week, the schedule opens up. He's getting Deebo Samuel back. It's very possible he gets hot again. And then the 49ers play the worst secondary in the NFL in the Fantasy Football Championship week. If you need a quarterback, Brock Purdy can be your guy. This is a great opportunity right now to go buy David Montgomery. David Montgomery has missed a few weeks with an injury. It was a rib. Signs are indicating that he could be back in week 10. If not, it's definitely going to be week 11. And rookie Jahmyr Gibbs has been running wild the last couple of weeks in Montgomery's absence. However, I fully anticipate David Montgomery is going to reestablish himself as the workhorse running back in that offense. Now, it might not be quite as extreme as it was prior to his injury because Jahmyr Gibbs is pretty damn good. But Montgomery's still going to lead this backfield in carries, and he's going to get the goal line work. He's been playing great football all year. If you need an RB2, you can definitely buy low on David Montgomery right now. Hey, if you like that video, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, leave a comment on what you want me to talk about next. You can find all my stuff, my rankings, articles, podcasts, more videos like this on yardsperfantasy.com. Just download the Yards Per Fantasy app, and we thank you for your support.